Been a while. Yeah, clean up real quick. Not quite there yet, but you know, at least I can do some work now. It's been a while. Things got really hot for a bit, so I decided to take a break. And it's now November, the end of November, so you know, these things happen. Let me finish getting everything set up. I'll bring you in, show you what we're working on today. Alright. Woo! So it's been a bit. Getting back into the swing of things is kind of hard. Just taking a little bit of a break. So we were of course working on Harlock. Clearly. These are, or this is Emeraldus's Gravity Saber. I have problems with my printer, so I have to wait for this part. And this is Harlock's pistol. They both need holsters. I'm very happy with this one. This came out perfect. This one's just as good, but I really like how this one turned out. So we're going to be emulating this. I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. We're going to go step by step. Make sure we're all on the same page. Let me pull you in. Since I've already done this once, I could take paper, set it around the gun, fold it, trace how I want everything to be, flatten it out, right? But I've already got one that I'm super happy with that we're just going to copy. And I'm going to show you the process with this. We'll get to it. Wrong bin. That's better. You know what? I may have jumped ahead. Because without having the ability to make a pattern, all the leather in the world's useless. So let's start with that. So basically what I'm doing is I know I'm going to have a solid piece here, right? So what I do is I decide what I want my basic shape to look like. Give myself a little bit of room. Don't need a huge ton of room. Overlap them. I put a mark. So what I do is I do a basic outline of what I want the holster shape to look like, roughly. I fold it over, and wherever the paper touches that mark, that lets me know where everything needs to be. So if I fold it in half and line up this mark with that mark, which is almost the edge of the paper, which is kind of nice, I know exactly what size I need to make my leather strip. So then I'm going to cut it along my line. The nice thing about leather is you don't have to really worry about seam allowance. Now I know on this one I wanted it to point upward at the front, which in this case is where the edge is. So that's kind of nice. I like that. That fits in pretty good. It's a little snug. I may widen it just a touch. Now for paper patterns, you can do all kinds of just stuff you wouldn't normally do. So if I know I want it to curl upward, cut it with an upward taper. That puts the seam at the back. Didn't want the seam at the back on this one, I wanted the seam on the side. So all I do, make a mark. I'm going over this pretty quick, because it's, you know, rewatch a couple times if you have to, but it's actually pretty easy. Everybody here's smart guys, smart gals, we'll figure it out. I put this edge here. This is where I can add my gap if I need it. Now if you notice, it doesn't quite line up, which means I'm going to lose my nice swoop I wanted, but I'm okay with that. I could add it back in on the seam if I really wanted. I'm not terribly worried about it. So to give myself just a little more room. I could put in another piece of paper, to smooth everything out, or else use tape. And since I've already got the pattern 100% where I want it, I'm just gonna trace anyway. I just thought, you know, the process would be useful to somebody else. So that's it. Right there is my holster pattern. It fits my gun perfectly. It's exactly what I wanted. So I'm just going to use this. If you notice, it's almost identical to this. This one's a little smaller actually. So again, since I've slipped the gun in this and I know exactly how I want it to work, I'm just going to trace this one. But that is how I would do it were I to start over from scratch. I like this piece of leather. It's got some nice texture to it, a little bit of movement. It's not too much. I may use this side, this side's got a little more dynamic flow. So then we just trace. Since I'm doing the inside, I have to keep in mind which side has the smooth grain, which side doesn't. I'm also going to mark where these ribs are. These were arbitrary. Oh, I forgot to mark on the other side. Jeez Louise. So now since the holster has a slight curve to it, I just gave just a hint of a curve to these as well. And then this is just going to follow this. And we do the same thing for the other side, except this one I added about an inch to the top, just so I would have, so I could fold it over. The edges don't matter nearly as much because they get held in place with the arm, or the strap. Since this is the inside, I can just mark it. Add my inch. Ish. And these are my my two flat pieces. For the long one, I'm just going to find one that's about the same length. Then I cut these out. I'll see you in a minute. So here are my three pieces. This one wasn't as long as I wanted, so I just used a shorter piece. And it's probably going to be fine anyway, but you know, it is what it is. It's a costume. For the ridges, I'm just using simple cording. Went out and I got a big spool of it. And I'm cutting it long. Once it's glued in, I will cut it to length. And I'm gluing them to the inside of the holster. That way I can push the outside into the edges to give kind of a little more definition. And I, of course, am using just contact cement. Nothing special. Same stuff I always use with my leather. There it is. This stuff is pretty nasty. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. Don't mess around with your lungs. I would normally let this stuff all tack up and do the, you do the contact cement thing. This time I'm not as worried about it. I'll let it dry in place. The only reason I'm not terribly worried about it on this part is because there's going to be another piece sandwiched on top of it. So it's not nearly as important. Now since I'm wet gluing this, I'm going to give it a full 2 hours to do its thing. This one, I'm just going to coat, fold in half, coat, let it cure, and then do. This one's going to be, yeah, look at that. Not happy with that, huh? Put a little more on that then. We'll let that be now. This, I'm just going to coat the whole thing, let it cure, and then fold it over the edge. Alright, we're going to give this about 5 to 10 minutes to cure. Let it do its thing. Come back when it's relatively tacky or mostly dry to the touch. That's where we'll pick back up. Alright, 10 minutes. It's pretty okay. We'll just move this one over here for now. This is just getting folded in half and tacked down. And this is solely because I want a clean edge on my my holster. Put you over. This is also going to get screws when everything gets held together, so it's not nearly as important. Alright, now contact cement needs pressure to properly set. It's a little cold in here, so I don't have the ventilation I really want. So for the next bit, I'm going to have my respirator on. So I'm going to explain what I'm doing first, and then we're going to do the thing. I'm going to coat this completely in contact cement, and then I'm going to coat this completely in contact cement and give it 10 minutes to cure. Now first, see, they don't line up perfect. Now they do. I'm going to put on a mask. Alright, it has had time to cure. Not a lot of time, but enough time. I wore gloves the entire time until I picked the stupid thing up, and I got glue on my fingers. Oh my goodness. All right. This goes down. Where? Centered. Yeah, centered. Top goes... Oh. This goes down this way. Since this is the inside, I want the strap seam on the inside. This goes on top. Luckily it's leather and it will stretch as needed. But I just lined it up as best I can. This is where a bone folder would be super, super useful. I don't have one. I should probably pick one up. They're not expensive. I just don't have one. Line everything up. Since it's still just a little wet, I can fold things a little more. Push it around here and there. Like with everything else, hit it with a hammer. Now I'm probably going to give this until overnight to fully cure before I go messing with it. Because I have a tendency to rush the project because I want to be done. And then it doesn't turn out as well as it could have. It rarely turns out bad. It's just not always as well as it could be. So, I'm going to let this cure overnight while I wait. Work on my gravity saber holster, which is the exact same process. Ain't none of this new. So we've got all this excess, right? At this point, I can just trim it all off. Make everything nice, flush, and even. That way when we fold it, it'll fit perfect. It's not that big of a deal because, you know, it's going to be completely covered, but the smoother everything is, the easier it is to work with. Alright. So now for this, we're just going to ease the top over. I kind of need to put more glue down. So I'm going to put a piece of, or a bead of glue all the way around the edge here. I'm going to follow the cording line. That should make everything pretty much exactly where I want it to be. Of course, I'm going to have to put it on both sides because, you know, that's how contact cement works. Luckily, if I overspill, like with right here, I can just leave it. Once it's dry, it's fine, it's inert. So now we leave it for a good 10-15 minutes. Let it cure, and then ease everything over. So now we need to ease the top here. Glasses. Ease the top over. Right? It's not overly difficult. I may grab a couple of clamps. A couple of spring clamps. Although to be honest, this is doing a way better job than the first time. Kim's Emeraldus was kind of difficult to do. This seems to have worked almost flawlessly. I'm a little nervous. I was getting worried when things work too well. Although to be fair, it is now completely covering my hands. But hey, can't have everything, right? Alright, let it cure completely and do its thing. Walk away. I can keep messing with it for days. Just walk away. Everything is set time to cure. So we're going to attach this all together. I'm just going to use a piece of lumber because I don't like punching out leather, I'll drill it out. It seems to work better for me. There we go. So all I'm going to do is fold this over, line this up, drill a bunch of holes. I'm going to start at the bottom and drill 2 holes in there. Last time I went all the way up and then looped and went all the way back down. I'm not doing that for this one because the leather is just a little too short for that. And honestly, I don't think it needs it. So the glue didn't hold real well on the edges. It's fine, because we are going to be drilling those anyway. So it doesn't matter. And yeah, I could use rivets. I just have problems with rivets. It's all me. Because I've never gotten a rivet to work properly. And I use screws. Or I use Chicago screws, to be exact. And it's more expensive to use a Chicago screw, but I'm just making stuff for me. So I don't care. I think my drill bit might be just a hair too big. And I like the option of being able to take things apart. Can't really do that with a rivet. So now I have to decide how long I want this strap to be. Because I'm probably going to go here. It's an arbitrary decision. That's about where I want it to hang on my belt. And that'll bring the end right to where these two cordings meet up. I think I'm going to go with a slightly smaller drill bit. So all I'm going to do, put in a couple of screws, or drill a couple holes, put in some screws, work my way up. It's pretty simple. So my battery died. I have no idea how much of what I just did you caught. So we're going to start over. I've got a piece of lumber because I want to pre-drill all of this stuff. I'm going to line everything up as best I can and drill some holes and feed in a couple of screws. Right here. And right here. Make sure we went through all of them, and we did. Mostly. These Chicago screws are just a hair too short. For just a little longer, it'd make things way easier, but yeah. It is what it is. So all I'm doing is feeding the flat part through. And the only reason I'm putting the spade blade on the outside is because I can't quite see what I'm doing to fit a bit in. Or a screwdriver in from the other side. Let's line it up, try to push it through as much as we can. I have the piece of lumber underneath still so I can push down and get a good positive affix onto this. Screw head through this side and then push until everything lines up. If I'm lucky. Hey, that one was actually pretty quick. Then I just do that a couple more times. I'm probably going to put one here and then one at the top. One at the top is going to be the easiest. Of course, we do the same thing for the other side. We just line everything up. So like I said, the glue didn't hold very well here on the edge. I'm not terribly worried about it because, you know, I got bolts holding everything in place. But if it gets to be a problem, I can always take it apart and re-glue it, which is why I like Chicago screws for all of my stuff. If I were mass producing them, I'd want rivets. I'm not. Just making them just for me. So buying a couple of screws instead of rivets, not that the end of the world. It's not that super expensive either. So, let's do that 4 more times. And then this one will be done. Now the Gravity Saber is exactly the same, except the difference with this one is I've got holes, which I didn't fill in, here and here, because it holds 2 belts. So if you're doing a dual belt system, this is the best way to keep them from separating or belts overlapping weird or, you know, anything of that nature. I do try to keep all of my bolts all upright, so they all go up and down, just because. I buy these in large assortment packs because, you know, I go through a lot of them. Weirdly enough. This holds multiple belts. Super useful if you're going to the Ren Fair and you want to have a bunch of different belts and look all steampunky. Or if you're, you know, dressing as Harlock and Emeraldus and need to have a bunch of belts. Because they do. You don't need to watch all this. I'll see you in a bit. So here they are. Harlock's blaster and Gravity Saber holsters. They turned out fantastic. I'm super happy with these. Yeah. I like the color, I like the feel, and these are going to be fantastic on the rest of the costume. So, since you made it to the end, I appreciate it. Do the like, comment, subscribe thing. You know. And I'll see you next week.